Hello and welcome to another Instagram live series called In Conversation, a weekly interview for now between myself, Jakash Kapin, and a member of our community. But in the future, you can also expect others interviewing one of the wonderful people that we are connected with. So, wherever you're joining from, this is going to be a relaxed conversation, delving into a really, really hot topic that a lot of people are paying attention to, which is, of course, the Gaia Music Collective from New York. In a couple of moments, Matt Goldstein, its founder, is going to join me. But before we do that, let me again invite you to our website, thewellvocal.com, where you can connect also with all kinds of other community members, approaches, and different views on vocal improvisation. You can find a global map full of over 1,000 members at the moment, but also a global event listing and an upcoming resources page. So we invite you to the well if you're in any way connected or interested in vocal improvisation. And please engage with us, ask us questions, and propose what we should do next. And now let's see if I think he is very busy in this period, in this autumn, but here he is.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Welcome, welcome. Really nice to see you too. How are you?
I am doing well. Cold,
Mm-hmm.
but well.
You have a wonderful light thing going on above your head, which is kind of
Yeah.
like, I think you are that of Gaia, aren't you? That
Like,
little energetic core in your
ha.
lovely flat. Oh,
We have
oh,
a big team meeting in this very living room tomorrow for 5 hours. So we're at the hub.
okay. So, I mean, to begin, let's start with maybe a little overview or the story, like a brief story, or what is Gaia Music Collective and how it was founded, what was the original idea, the seed of which it stems from.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what Gaia is now, Gaia is an organization here in New York that puts on participatory connective music events of many different sorts. So we have kind of the thread of vocal improvisation and circle singing are woven through almost all of our events. So we have circle singing sessions, open mic nights, songwriting circles, folk song nights, one day choirs, participatory shows, all sorts of things aimed at offering people opportunities to connect to each other, to connect to themselves, all in ways that are super accessible and caring. And it started in my living room 3.5 years ago. And it was right as people were getting vaccinated. And the first thing that I wanted to do after that time was just be with people in music and sing.
Hmm.
And so I took some of Rhiannon's Vocal River games and started combining those with different techniques that I'd been kind of pulling from different musical communities that I'd been in. I started leading these living room sings. It'd be like 6 people,
Hmm.
um, and then it was 10 people, then it was 15 people, and that when we started posting about that on social media, that's kind of when this whole thing started to bubble and explode. And now we have like 22 events a month or something, and we just had our biggest choir yet in London, which was like nearly 400 people.
That's wonderful, which is where I'm at now, and we're gonna get
Yeah.
to that. I wonder, so was improvisation always there? I mean, I know that one day one choir, maybe it's the most visible side of your work, is the one that gets the most engagement, where you get to involve like amazing, well-known mainstream artists, invite them in. But was improvisation always there at the beginning?
Yeah, improvisation was the heart of
Hmm.
this project, and still is. I mean, anytime our team is, even the admin on our team, anytime we're having meetings, we're like starting our meetings with group jams and singing, um, and throughout all of these events, we're opening every session with, simple call and response, improvisation, ways to wake up people's music muscles and instincts, and collaborative vocal improvisation and circle singing are really the heart of most of what we
Hmm.
do.
I also just came from a weekend of organizing here in the UK, with five other people, our UK Vocal Improv Collective. And it's just amazing how that group mind concept, develops over time, especially when it's embodied
Mm,
and when singing is woven into everything that we do. But I guess my question is also why, why are we drawn to it? Why were you drawn to
mm,
it? I remember feeling like a real sense of collaboration and openness when I was there in New York at your events in your home. So maybe just where does that come from for you as a person and a singer?
mm. What a great question, right? We spend so much time pursuing these things. Why? Um, I think I can only speak for myself, but for me, it's the practice where I feel most connected to myself, to my intuition, to my body and my abilities. When I feel most connected to other people, there's something so present about that kind of listening and that kind of engagement where you can have a conversation with people, where eight of you are speaking at the same time and you're listening and there's understanding and communicating with eight people at the same time. You can communicate such rich, uh, intimate, exciting, funny things are possible when you're communicating in this way. And it's just always so surprising. I never get bored of it. There's always the moment of something clicking out of
Hmm.
with new singers. It's always electric to me. It just the feeling in the air. It's got that like sizzle.
And you have a lot of new singers. The
Mm.
sessions that I was at in New York, they mostly had majority people that were there for the first time. There were, the regulars who were part of your community, but every single session that I was at had lots of new, mostly kind of, middle-aged and younger people from the city who are just so excited to be there. And
Yeah.
so maybe my next question is about your facilitation approach, the way you present things, which is quite particular. If people go to your Eventbrite and they read through, there's a particular language and a message that you're sending through the advertising, through the text. But then also when you're in the room, you're very particular about how you hold the space, how you want the flow of the sessions to be. So maybe just to say more about how that developed over time and what it consists of, right now.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. There's so many ways to hold this kind of form, and something that has been um, that felt important to me when we were starting this project and community was to try to hold things and craft things in a way that holds a big enough space that many different kinds of people can resonate with it. And of course, you can't resonate with everybody. That's like a
Hmm.
foolish endeavor that I still find myself chasing sometimes. But we try to, in all the language we're using before the event, at the event, to be really clear about a couple of things. First of all, that everything is
We cannot hear you at the moment. At least I can't.
oh,
Now I
you're back.
can. You're
Okay.
back. Hello.
um, Dramatic. Uh, we try to make it really clear that everything is invitational, everything is optional, everything is consent based, because I don't know about you, but I've been in spaces where it's sort of implied that like you just sort of have to go along with everything that's happening, or there isn't explicit consent given to, hey, if you don't want to participate in this movement game we're doing, you can sit back. And I've found that just offering that clear invitation to people to like draw their boundaries if there's a game they don't want to do, to just like watch, and that they're not going to feel ostracized or weird for sitting on the outside of something. Um,
Mhm.
that feels really important. And we also try to keep our events, at least from the facilitator's perspective, kind of like religiously and spiritually, um, secular isn't quite the right word, but to leave them open enough that people can bring their own meaning, right? So rather than
Mhm.
saying, can't you all feel the spirit of the earth moving through your soul? Like that's so beautiful. And some people don't resonate with that. And what we're trying to do is really focus on the music itself, so that then whatever meaning people are bringing, and to let the people share it rather than the facilitator. So we'll often hold space. What did you experience? And someone might say, oh, this got my nerdy music brain going, and someone else might be like, I experienced my ancestors. Someone else might be like, I experienced Jesus. And we're like, that's so cool, but try to hold it in a way that lets all of those things have validity. Um, and so that's a little bit of like the mindset that goes behind how we're crafting these sessions, and then the flow itself um, is constantly shifting and improvised, but there's sort of a general flow of like five, six, kind of like chapters that
Hmm.
we are often considering when we're facilitating. Um, there's an opening chapter of play, just kind of waking up with some call and response activities to get people waking up in their bodies, and then some sort of connecting stage where we're inviting people to share a little bit with their neighbors, do a little partner or a small group share or a full group share if it's a small enough group, into some sort of grounding thing, a long tone thing or a movement thing, a breath thing, into the main flow, whatever the flow of that event is, whether it's an open mic or a choir, and then some sort of intentional closing. I think those are the biggest things. And throughout that opening space for sharing as well, because it's nice. I mean, sometimes we do events that are totally sung through, but I also have found that it's so rich when you get to hear from people's perspectives of what they're noticing or what they're learning. I always learn so much from hearing the different ways that our community members reflect on what they're noticing about their experience.
Mm. And obviously, at this point, you have a huge global following, right? I mean, people are viewing your content from all over. They want to have you in your city. It's popping, it's popular. So I guess I want to go into the learnings of the last couple of years because a lot of people are trying to set up, a community, especially through vocal improvisation, a circle singing space or something else, like even a small space. Um, to sing with a couple of people and they're not quite sure how to frame it, how to market it, and it's not really about the marketing per se, but I want to give you maybe the space to reflect on some learnings that kind of followed the growth of the collective, the team, challenges, anything that you feel like it's important. I mean, I know there's so
Okay,
many,
do we
but
have
i'm
10
i
days to
know i
talk?
know but we can chat again. This is just the first one, we can come back to it, but just something that gives people a glimpse into how that journey was for you.
Mm, yeah, so many learnings. I mean, the thing in my throat. Um, meep. Uh, One of the biggest things that's been most interesting about the scale of the interest, like you were saying, in this particular community. I mean, first of all, there's clearly people all over the world who are just so hungry to sing and to connect. And I think that existed way before Gaia, that exists way after Gaia. That's just a truth that I am constantly reminded of. So many people are just hungry to connect in this way. And I think something that you say it's not about the marketing, but it also like is a little bit about the marketing
Kind of
sometimes, in
also
that
is in this age.
um, in this age, and something that has been true from the beginning is that the things that the tools that have been allowing us to grow this and
Hmm.
connect with people through social media, apart from really intentional storytelling on these platforms, right? Like spending time on the platform to see how people are creating short form content, what kind of framing devices or opening, you know, how are you telling the story of what's happening in a way that will grab people in those first couple seconds? My God, it's never a guarantee, but it's this game that so many artists are now having to play. But something that has been allowing us to feed into this is the way that we've incorporated the use uh, of popular songs, and whether through our house show series, which is where the first kind of viral moments came from, these apartment shows where we would be doing a cover of a song and then teach the audience harmonies and we'd all jam together, and then now it's these one day choirs. People often are just uh, it's really hard to communicate circle singing
Hmm.
in short form content, because so much of what makes it so beautiful is the patience of seeing it evolve, of seeing it stacked part by part. And there's definitely ways to communicate that. Um, but the things we've had most success with communicating are just here's a song you maybe like, and here's us singing it in a new way. And then once people, that's kind of the doorway. And then we have all these people showing up to come to a candlelight circle sing that maybe saw a video of a song they knew, but then they went on the website and they're like, "Ooh, well, this, that." Um, and so I think that that's been part of the secret of what's allowed the whole program to build has been from um, the power of songs that are
Mm.
kind of shared in our collective consciousness.
Hmm. But let me give you a challenge, though, while we're here. If you would have to present circle singing or vocal improvisation or collaborative improvisation in a video or like in sentences, from your experience of now doing it for a while, how would you approach that
Mm,
challenge? Or, how would you say it right now in a way that
yeah,
would engage people most effectively? Mad Goat scene.
people love to see the behind the scenes of how a thing comes to be. There's there have been people who've been really successful on social media, like where they'll just be like, "Here's a thing," and they have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven on the screen, and they're like alto part, and they stack that one, and they go tenor part, and
Mm-hmm.
they stack that one, and so I think that's one way that circle singing can be compelling is to break down a harmony or any sort of layered improvisation. You get video of the thing building one by one, and then you cut it, you shorten it so that you just get here's this part and then this part and this part and then you feel them stack one by one and then you get to experience the whole how they all come together because people love to see and that's so much what circle singing is, right? Is the development of ideas and stacking of layers and textures, and so that's one way that we've tried to communicate it. And then also sometimes we're just trying to tell the story of you know uh, watch this conductor as they make up parts on the spot with a room full of strangers. It's a little bit corny sometimes, the the having to try to distill the story of what makes this so magical into two sentences. And so we're always trying different angles of do we focus on the fact that it's strangers? Do we focus on the fact that this artist is composing in the spot? Do we and this is one that I think is actually really underused, would
Yes.
be we lean in,
Yes.
would be the gamification of things to
Mm.
have like a bowl of words, say, and then pull a word out of the hat and show the camera, oh, it says maybe it has a groove on it. Maybe it's salsa, or maybe it's a theme. Maybe it's
Mhm.
autumn. And then you cut together photos of that facilitator, then like making the song on the spot so the audience can know, oh, they're really improvising. There's proof that like this was actually something random. Things like
Hmm.
that. People love a little game.
Yeah, yeah, because otherwise, if you just drop into an improvisation, often it doesn't feel that transferable, right? Because it feels so different while you're doing it and in the room. And then if you just share a little segment, usually that doesn't tell much of the story at all.
Yeah.
So it's about maybe finding other ways of doing it. I guess something that I'm quite inspired by as well is that from what I've seen, you do vast majority of your content with a mobile phone, right?
Mm,
And just with someone being in the center of the circle. So it's not necessarily about the big production
no.
and spending on the content, right? It's so much more about actually, yes, being in the room and being alive with the camera, but also about what you're capturing, how are you putting it together, and what the message is. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's many ways to make successful content, but I really think iPhones are they're so great these days, the quality and people I think there's a different feeling when something's really highly produced than when you're just like, oh, I'm just someone in a room, And I think this
Hmm.
kind of practice lends itself to to content that feels organic,
Yeah,
feels
and
casual.
it's not about perfection either. In one day, one choir, it's like you're just there for those 2, 3 hours, and then by the end, you're gonna do a run through. But there's no
Yeah.
guarantee there's gonna be a great run through, right?
Yeah, so often the most magical moments are in the process, as you're running through the song earlier and we're trying to always emphasize it's so tricky when you as soon as you bring in a camera, people ooh, and so we're always trying to just emphasize like we're here to be with each other. This is a tool to communicate to people. So many of you found us through this, so like we're going to keep using
Hmm.
this tool to try to keep reaching more people, but let's try to ignore it as much as we can.
Yeah, exactly. And now, in terms of taking us behind the scenes, right? I'm quite interested in the structure of how you actually get to run, the collective. I think most people would see the content, and I'm kind of interested in the story of the back the scene or volunteers, team members. You can share whatever you want to share, but just a glimpse into how it actually works or how
Yeah.
it developed over time and who's, responsible for everything that we see on the front page.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting the way that it's developed, and it feels like it's constantly growing and developing further. So this is, where it is now is different than where it was a year ago. I'm sure where it'll be a year from now, but um, for the first year or so, I was kind of the main motor.
Mm-hmm.
I was facilitating all the events for that first year and a half, um, writing all the emails, doing all the social media. Like it was just grang, grang, ga, 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 ga. And then um, slowly expanded a team of 4 or 5 people that were sort of a sounding board. We would meet and just bounce ideas, and they would offer their insights. And then someone came on to help kind of organize some volunteers. Someone else came on to help a little bit with some administrative stuff with the event pages. And then we had this sort of explosion moment where I was leaving the summer of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to be traveling for 3 months, and I wanted the community to still have an outlet to meet and connect during those 3 months. So we kind of just exploded the team all at once. We brought on 5 core facilitators and a social media person and a director of operations and all sorts of different things. And there was a lot of learning from that when I came back from the summer to be like, whoa, I did this and then I left. That was crazy. Um, and then the last year was a process of us just trying to really find our rhythms as a team. And something that I've noticed seems different from many of the vocal improvisation communities that I have met with around the globe is that
Mm-hmm.
so many of these teams, the artists and facilitators who are running the teams are also doing all of the admin, which are just very different um, skills and desires. I remember when I was having to do all the admin, I was such a drag. So we've tried to, with its own challenges and joys, to try to kind of separate out some of that work. So now our team has sort of 3 different branches. We have sort of like the marketing branch, the admin branch, and the facilitating
Mm-hmm.
artists. So we have still 6 core facilitators, I believe, that do any number of things a given month. Some of them live in New York, some of them are traveling in and out, which has been complicated to find like consistent rhythms there. We're currently in the process of being like, should we find a system where it's like, oh, you do every Tuesday
Mm.
and then you do every other Monday? Or does it actually serve us as artists to be more flexible, but then that makes it hard to reserve these spaces and things aren't available? There's all these complications. So we have our facilitator team, marketing team, which is 2 graphic design members and led by Joss, who is our graphic design lead, who has such a huge impact on the way that we communicate what this is
Mm.
with her really smart and clean aesthetic choices. Um, and then Joanna is our social media kind of content creator, and so she's at a lot of the events, capturing stuff, crafting different content. And then we have the admin team, which is so indispensable. We have 2 administrative assistants. We have the co-director, and the kind of structure of leadership right now is that me and my friend Hannah are co-directors of the project, and I sort of end up with some of the more artistic direction
Mm-hmm.
stuff. She ends up with some of the more like managing, project management, administrative stuff. And so the two of us are everyone's working kind of part time. The 2 of us are working fullest time, maybe not full
Or
time, but like,
over full
or
time.
sometimes over full time.
Yeah.
Especially if you bring into account that I'm often like doing admin during the day and then I'm doing music during
Yeah.
the night,
I
which
mean, the
is
times
crazy.
when I've seen you, when we were together in person, you're kind of always working on the side. So you're like doing something and then it's kind of like, I'm sure it's over full time.
It's true. It's
Mm.
true. So that's been the structure right now. Is um, sort of the 2 of us trying to like keep the ship afloat, direct the projects, direct some of the flow as things start to have these pop up events, different projects like a fundraiser or designing merchandise or whatever. And then at all the steps throughout this process, tuning in with our team to see what are the different ideas or perspectives that people are bringing. And we finally have found a rhythm now where we're able to meet in person more often. We were doing all this on Zoom, which is just like super draining
Mm.
and no fun. And so now we're trying to have full team meetings like twice a month in person where we get to do a little singing and then we get to get into some of these discussions. So
Yeah, and those are so important. I mean, from my experience, building a collective decision making, right, as a concept just takes longer, and it's a whole different thing. But I think what happens to us as improvisers, we tend to bring the values of the music into the other spaces. So we just cannot then have this complete hierarchical structure that would go, against the values of how we collaboratively improvise. So it's just
Yeah,
something to bear in mind. And it has its challenges, but I'm sure that at the end, bringing more improvisation, into the structures and decision making is the right way to go.
I think so. And I feel this dissonance, like you're saying, between the practices of um, being in the circle, being in the flow, and then the nature of running a business, running an organization where you have to make all these decisions and accounts and balancing all these different interests and needs. And some of that stuff gets incredibly bogged down if every single element of that is brought to a group discussion, but
Hmm.
then that can easily get lost if none of it's brought to a group discussion. You can lose its way and you miss out on perspectives that are really important. So we're constantly trying to find the complicated blend between like collective and structure and horizontal and vertical um, more and more I've been trying to think of the leaders of this project as like kind of like we think of in the circle,
Hmm.
facilitators, truly like there's someone at the center of the circle kind of opening up the space, introing leading parts, but then welcoming someone else into the center of the circle or getting an idea for a part from within the circle and trying to uplift the circle while still holding it all together.
Yeah. And what is next for Gaia Music Collective? I'm sure, oh wow, how to even summarize, but maybe priority
Mm,
areas or things that you're most excited about or the things that hold, the center going forward. Whatever you can share. I'm sure you cannot share everything, but just something about the
yeah,
future, woo
yeah.
direction.
Yeah, there's so much
Mm.
possibility, which is really exciting and also overwhelming at times because at any given event, someone will often come up to one of us at the end and be like, "Have you ever thought about," and insert one
Hmm.
of, 30, 40 different ideas that we're like, "Yeah, we thought about that." Um, but the things that are coming through as priorities, I think, are continued exploration of what popping up in different communities is like and just getting to build some of those connections. It's been so um, it was so beautiful to get to do these first pop-up events over the past season in places like London and DC, LA, Boston, the Bay, um, and uh, and also kind of with our Rock the Vote collaboration and
Hmm.
around the election, we were in like 18 cities at once, which was also just beautiful and crazy. So, continuing to do some pop-up events and build relationships with people in different places so that then we can start to get curious about okay, when we go and often something that people are sharing, they're like, we want this to be more consistent. We want something
Mm.
like this more regularly. And so as we've gone to places, we've tried to first and foremost connect people to all of the stuff that's already happening there. So we've had community music walls, we call them, where we take a piece of paper on the wall and just invite anyone to scribble on a piece of paper, tape it up on the wall, and say, "Oh, there's this choir that meets on Tuesdays, and there's this vocal improv circle on Mondays," and so people can just see. And we were in London; it covered like
Hmm.
2 full walls. There were so many offerings in London; it was really crazy. Um, so hoping that when we come to town, that we can bring people together who might not otherwise see each other's offerings, and then
Yeah.
send them back out, and then hopefully put together some sort of facilitator training or facilitator alignment program for people who are curious about the tools that we've been using, how we approach facilitation. Because we get people often asking, like, I want to start something like this in my community.
Mm.
Can you hop on a Zoom call with me and tell me how to do it? I'm like, it's going to take
Mm.
more than one Zoom call, baby, but yes, but yes. So hopefully over the next year or so, getting to design some sort of curriculum that can be a mix of online and in person. I'm currently in the Musico do Circolo leadership training, which I'm
Hmm.
really inspired by how they're doing that. And then offer these tools to people and then see what makes most sense. Is it to empower people to go and start their own thing with their own kind of flavor? Or will there eventually be Gaia Gaia London, Gaia
Mm-hmm.
LA. Well, what would that look like? How would we build infrastructure that would allow us to manage and support that scale of thing while also letting it be artistic, responsive to the local community, in flow and improvisation. When you get something to be that big, it can be hard to still find ways for that to breathe. So that's something we're trying to
Hmm.
go really slowly so that we can just like make really conscious choices that always center the humans, the practice, the local communities.
Yeah.
And one
So
day
this idea
also
of
a summer festival would be
oh,
nice.
Summerfest. Everyone likes a Summerfest. Next year, the year after. Oh, you don't have to tell us. You'll tell us when it's
I would
ready.
love for it to be next year, but it might have to wait
Yeah,
another.
yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah,
See.
so it's this idea of being a catalyst, and it's similar with the well, the
Yeah,
first global network for folk improvisation, having that global map where people can connect and just
yeah,
put their dot on,
it's
and
amazing.
also building a resources page where people can, go in and grab a, warm-up tool or grab a tool for a
Mm,
large group or a middle group. So maybe just a question about that, like our possible future collaboration, how do we best support the community? Also, your view of the current vocal improvisation community. Where is it at from your perspective, and just what are the real opportunities that can really bind us together and not make us do the same work multiple times,
mm,
through connection and exchange. How do you view that part of the journey?
mm, mm. I mean, I think the seems like vocal improvisation is uh, really just starting to grow exponentially, and more people are spawning their own communities or projects, and things like the well are helping us to kind of interconnect awareness of all the beautiful things that are happening around the world.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of something like the well existing. I'm so glad that y'all are doing what you're doing, and yeah, resources pages where people can just share games and things. Like, wow, what? Of course. Um, and I hope that there can just be continued more connection, conversation, and really that we can all also just get time to sing together, to like
Mm-hmm.
be and travel and meet this community here and this person come here and have. I mean, that's why I think these festivals is such a beautiful thing. When I got to go to this Le Cercle Enchanté and meet all these beautiful artists and learn some of their games and connect with them, and that's I think what really allows this to deepen and send the roots down to reach even higher.
Mm. And it's yeah, it feels like just the beginning where those connections are maybe forming for the first time and people are realizing what's out there and what is possible. And then I'm
Yeah.
sure that's gonna, develop over time. Um, I think before we end, I just want to say a big thank you to you,
Mm.
personally, because you've been doing such amazing work and that hustling maybe sometimes goes unnoticed, but when it comes together, in a room full of people and then the way you hold space and allow others to come in, it's just brilliant. And the way you're viewing this project as a catalyst and a way in, the same way that social media can be a way in, but then it doesn't stay narrow, like it opens up and it's shared outwardly. I think that's such a beautiful perspective.
Oh,
So thank you.
thank you.
And I guess if you want to add anything about this final why, I sometimes wonder. I think maybe we're a bit similar in those terms, but when it was just the hustling and just you, what keeps us going then? What is the I don't know. You can say something about the why or just close in any way you want. The floor is yours.
Mm. Why? Sometimes I ask myself, I'm like, why? Why am I working so hard? And it's two things. It's part of it is because I see the impact it has on
Hmm.
people. I see people sending us messages, coming up to us after events, and just sharing what it means to them to get to meet people in a way that feels authentic or vulnerable or kind, or to express themselves after they haven't had a place to express themselves in years, or maybe they've never sung with people before ever, and this is helping them find their voice. And so many people have shared that it's been so transformative for them, and so that I care so much for these people, that some of whom I don't even know, but I, you know, the thought of them not having those outlets really aches. Anytime we've been doing these pop-ups, we'll go to
Mm.
LA and then we'll leave and they're like, come back soon. And I'm like, okay, I need to take a nap,
Yeah.
but like also I need to come back. And so that really keeps me going because I just believe in the power of these practices. And then also it just feels good. It just feels good when I'm in a room in music in this way, whether I'm being led in song by a collaborator or facilitating or singing it. It just is my favorite place to be. It just feels good in my body, in my heart, in my soul. It just feels good, and that's I think a big part of the why. I think I just it feels good. Why?
Matt,
What
thanks.
are your whys?
My wife's turning the tables. I think I often wonder as well. I think there is almost definitely the felt side of how it feels, and then your body remembers and stores that memory, and then you can never let go of that memory, and that memory kind of comes behind you when you make choices, and it reminds you of that experience, and then your choices shift, and then that part of you grows, and then over time it sort of takes over, I think. The part that just wants to create those spaces and share, and then I'm sure there are kind of personal reasons around, the hustling side of us that wants to just. But then it's also that improvisation can also slows us down and shift perspective, and it's such a unique way of seeing someone else and seeing the reality of our being, and that then it cannot just stay in that room. At least for me, I cannot then consider that it would just be for the people that I know, and then we would meet in these closed spaces and improvise, and that's it. It just doesn't make sense, and especially with the this experience of someone seeing the website for the first time and realizing they're not alone. Even
Mm,
just seeing the description on the website and that there are other people doing it just means so much to someone, in another country. And of course there's also the side about improvisation and as a way of life, and improvising as our life depends on it, which kind of connects to collective liberation and struggles of peoples around the world, how much of it is an ancient practice as well, and how that relates to the struggles of indigenous people, and how that relates to the knowledge that they hold in comparison to maybe some of the modernities, this embodiment, that we are kind of getting into, and this connection that we are needing when we sing and improvise. And that's just those are for me just important perspectives, like to keep highlighting. So then when that is your choice, that it cannot just stay in that room, then you just start reaching out, and over time that grows and it becomes yeah, just a way of existing.
mm, beautifully said.
Thank you. Oh, Matt, thank you so much. Can't wait to sing with you in person.
Mm,
I wish you lots of space and connection and kind of nourishment within everything that you're doing. Thank you again for joining. Sending all the hugs to the
mm.
Gaia Music Collective community. And see you next time in another conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Yaka. This has been such a treat, and I'm so excited about the well and where it's all going. So thank you for all you're doing.
Likewise. Okay, have a brilliant rest of your day. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye 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 bye.